meeting of the Mount Anthony School Board to order at 6 o'clock. Let's just take a quick gander at who is here. At the office, we have 3 members of the board. And who do we have there? Can you tell me, Renee?
Yep, we have Stephanie Mulligan, Tori Rich, Jackie Kelly, Ed Letourneau, Susan Plassant. I think, did I miss any board members?
I don't know who's on the phone.
Whoever's at 1-802-379-5439, can you just identify yourself for the record?
Yes, it's Mary Morrissey.
Mary Morrissey. Thank you, Mary.
All right, we'll open the meeting with public comments. Are there any public comments?
I have a public comment or a question if this is the appropriate time.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, good evening and thank you for letting me join you for a moment. As I often look over the budgets in the town as they're being prepared, I have a question for the Mount Anthony budget document. And the document that I was looking at was titled Mount Anthony Union High School District Number 14 Revenue. There is a line item titled Fund Balance, and it shows a balance from the 2022 budget of $2 million, and the column next to it, which would be the proposed budget for 2023, it shows a total of $3 million. So that would mean, if I'm doing the math right, and it looks like there's a $1.7 million increase in revenue to the 2023 proposed budget. Could Renee or any of you as board members tell me where I can find this line item in the proposed, the whole document of the proposed Mount Anthony 2023 budget draft? And could you tell me what this $3.7 million is being budgeted for?
Yes, we can. Renee, do you want to start off with that? It's 3.7 actually.
Yep. Essentially what
Right,
that is.
That was what I said.
Yep. So when our financial records are audited, which they are in the process of being right now, the general fund is reviewed by our auditors, and they essentially take the revenue that we received during FY21, and we subtract from that the total expenditures from the general fund of FY21, and it resulted in a surplus of $3.7 million. So by statute, we have to use that money as offsetting revenue for subsequent budgets, unless an article was put before the voters to use the money for a reserve fund, which we did with Mount Anthony several years ago. So this board has the discretion annually to review the fund balance, if there is one, and set that aside in a reserve fund if the board decides to do so.
But I asked, though, where does it show on the overall budget document? Because I usually like to kind of match up where it is. And again, I just, wondered, because that's a significant amount of money, and just where it would be in the proposed budget, or is it broken down into different areas?
No, so this isn't an expenditure. This is an offsetting revenue. So essentially what happens.
I do understand that. That's
okay.
What I said in my statement. I do understand it's a revenue, but what is it being proposed to go towards?
Towards the budget. So that 3.7 million, potentially less $1 million, would be offsetting our demand on the education fund. So we would potentially be using the full amount. And if the board decides it wants to pull any amount out of that, then that would go into a reserve fund. So as of right now, the budget documents that I have posted show $1 million potentially going into the reserve fund. And therefore 2.7 million would be left to offset our demand on the education fund.
Does that make sense?
I guess, somewhat. It's a little bit convoluted, but it does make, I guess, some sense.
Basically,
Thank you.
Mary, basically what we're doing, we're taking, at this particular time, we're taking $2.7 million and we're applying it to our budget, which means that that money does not have to be raised by taxes.
Which is a great thing, but again, I didn't see the $3.7 million revenue on the overall draft of the bill. I was just trying to connect the dots from the one sheet of paper that showed the revenues to what the budget draft is. But I'm sure as you're finalizing your budget, hopefully that will show up so it's obvious to the voters.
I can share it.
Okay.
I can share my screen
Okay,
if you
good.
want me to right now.
Good, yeah, go ahead.
We're jumping ahead a little bit, but
Could I chime in with a question?
Well, let's just wait and let Renee answer it. She would like to answer that, and then we'll entertain that question. Go ahead, Renee.
okay. So if we look at what the overall budget, so this is the expenditure side. And we look at the total budget with the Southwest Tech included is the 28.6 million. Net to operate with taking the tech center out because that budget is voted on separately brings us to the 25.8 million. If I jump over to the revenue page, you can see our total revenue is that 28.6 million to cover our whole budget. And we essentially take off all of this offsetting revenue. So above that blue line and here. So that is our offsetting revenue of $3.1 million. And then what we would be asking for from the education fund is the $25.4 million. So from there, that is where we end up generating our cost per pupil and deriving our tax rates from that. So the revenue is definitely tied to the expenditure budget and it just works backwards. So we take off all the revenue and whatever's left that we don't have is what we have to ask for the education fund, which then drives our tax rate.
Right, so that should be if I'm hearing this correctly, that should lower the impact to the taxpayer.
Yes, it is an offsetting revenue, which does help, yes, reduce the tax burden. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your answer and your time tonight.
Someone
Thank
else that had another public comment?
Yeah, there was somebody else who asked a question.
Yeah, yes, Sherry Sargent. I was just wondering what the intent for the reserve fund was. That seems a lot. Is there a goal to use it for something in particular, or is it being set aside?
The reserve fund is set up as the name implies. It is funds that the board can use at its discretion where it feels it's needed. For instance, if we found at the end of next year, when we were putting the budget together, that we did not have a sufficient fund balance to be able to keep our tax rate relatively stable, we could then use that reserve fund to lower the tax rate for the coming year, not for this year, but for the coming year. That would be one thing we could do about it. The other thing that the reserve fund can do, that there are certain projects that have been identified throughout the school by our director of buildings and grounds, Tony, And they, because we wanted to keep and always felt we should keep the budget at a reasonable rate, we have not included those expenditures in the budget. And if the board feels that they should use that money to do one or two of those things, we do have the funds to be able to do it. The reserve fund puts the board in a position where they can use those funds to do things that are not included in the budget and to relieve that financial pressure from the taxpayers in upcoming budgets.
Thank you.
I see Sean Marie.
There, I'm Sean Marie Oler from Bennington. I just wanted to comment or say thanks to the 3 retirees on the MAUHS list. Diane Moore spent many years teaching sciences and was one of the very first to start with the online technology and has been doing so for many years. And then Jim Cross is the science department, and Ms. Ladd had come over from the middle school. So Tim, I'm sure you're going to thank them for their years of service, but I just wanted to acknowledge that Diane's long time working in the district.
Thank you, Sean Marie, very much.
Is there anyone else? I don't see any other hands.
I think we can move on then. I apologize. We have the superintendent's report, and tonight, Laura. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
We'll be giving it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So I'm Assistant Superintendent Laura Boudreau, and I'm glad to be here tonight. And I'm here with some of my colleagues. Renee Gordon, who I partner with this grant work. Kay Abbott is here, who's our Interim Director of Student Support Services. Jessa Ordway, who I wanted to introduce to the board, is our SVSU Behavior and Social Emotional Coach, and she's going to help us tonight. And we could not do this work without the partnership of our building administrators, Principal Chris McGuire and Principal Tim Payne. So because you did not have a December meeting, you're going to get 2 recovery pillars in one meeting. And we're going to run through both pillars, and then we'll ask for questions at the end. Okay. So the first pillar of, I'll have you wait for just a minute. So the first pillar of recovery is super important, and you heard us talk about it a lot last year. It's social emotional health and wellness. And that's the foundation that we want to have for our students. And I was working with a group of new teachers last week, and so I'm going to ask you all to engage with me for just a minute. So if everyone, wherever you're sitting, can take one hand and make a fist, and that's the middle of your brain, that's your limbic system, and where your emotions take place. And I'll take your other hand and put it on top, and that's your cortex, and that's where learning takes place. So when, even ourselves, when the middle of our brain is going like this, and the students that we serve, the middle of the brain is going like this, guess what can't happen? Learning. So the first pillar, thank you for indulging me. The first pillar of recovery is social emotional health and well-being. Renee, would you please share your screen? Thank you. So first we're going to do some acronym updates. ESSER, you'll hear us say ESSER, which is Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. MTSS is Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. CIP is Continuous Improvement Plan. PBIS is Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. SRSSIE is Student Risk Screening Scale for Internalizing and Externalizing. And SWIS is another data management tool we use that is school-wide information systems. So as we support our students as they come out of recovery, and we're monitoring their growth, which is positive, we're super excited about that. We want to let you know that our recovery plan can be found on the SVSU website. Would you please click on that tab? Sure. And you'll notice in the bottom that there is a link that says ESSER Funds and Recovery Plan. And when you click on that link, you'll find the work that started over a year ago when the state asked us to draft a recovery plan with staff members, community members, and the rest of our community. And so we collected data from our stakeholders and we drafted a plan, which you can find under planning and implementation. And what I really want to highlight is the feedback form. So as you're listening to this presentation tonight, there is an active link on our website where you can always add feedback. That feedback link is checked regularly, and we use that to update our plan. So if you have ideas for how you'd like to see us use our grant money, please click that link. So heading back to our presentation. Thank you, Renee. Social emotional health and wellness is very much linked to our proficiency-based learning. And the state of Vermont provides us with standards that we teach to, and then we develop our curriculum based on that. And we have 5 transferable skills under behavior and social emotional learning that we find super important. We want our students to walk out with clear and effective communication, creative and practical problem solving, informed and integrative thinking, responsible and involved citizenship, and self-direction as well. So we're going to give you a little snippet of data. Every presentation we do with you, we're going to give you a little snippet of data. Collecting data during the pandemic has been trying. And so we want you to understand that we're giving you little pieces. And we know that over time, we'll be able to give you some larger pieces of information that we'll be using to help plan budgets. So for this pillar, I'm going to have Renee scroll down. So at the Mount Anthony level, we give the SRSSIE, which is our student risk screening scale for internalizing and externalizing behaviors. So I know Jessa is here. So an example of, so I know she'll jump in at some point if she needs to. An example of internalizing is we watch for students that are feeling anxious or lonely. So that's internalizing. And then, so for us right now, for internalizing, you can see we've given you a little bit of data. So our MAU students, 71% are at low risk. Moderate risk is and high risk combined is about 29% of our population. We have a group of students that we really want to watch right now for internalizing behaviors. And then for externalizing, where we would witness problems with peers or some aggressive behavior, and here's the visual. And then again, low at the Mount Anthony level, 75% of our students are at low risk, 17% are at moderate risk, and 8% are at high risk. So again, we have a group of students that we're going to use our resources to monitor. So I'm going to have you scroll down a little bit more. I'm also the homeless liaison for the district, and I'm in my second year in this role. And so last year, between August and June, and I'll focus at the secondary level right now, which would be MAU, I did 8 homeless intakes. Between August and December 10th of this year, and this data includes Arlington, at the secondary level, I've done 18 homeless intakes. I just want you to think about that. So we've seen a huge uptick in our homelessness. So we as a team, we use this data to then, and we've used the resources that have been provided for us to make some plans. So under behavior, I just want you to take a peek at K through 3 and 4 through 5, because they've also had this presentation. You'll see some positive behavior intervention supports is what we use for behavior. And then you'll see second step and zones of regulation, conscious discipline in Arlington. Now let's look at the middle school and the high school. So again, you're going to see positive behavior intervention supports are instructional resources we use for behavior. Jessa, do you want to tell them a little bit about second step?
Sure. So second step is our evidence-based curriculum that's K through 8 for our social emotional learning. It was new to the district last year. And there was a group that kind of landed on utilizing this through a kind of a process of, vetting resources and hoping that this would meet the needs of our students. So that is implemented K through 8.
And I'm also going to let you share a little bit about zones of regulation.
Sure. So zones of regulation is kind of listed as a supplementary tier 1 resource for social emotional learning. It really helps with providing common language and to also build upon skills of self-regulation, so that hopefully, students that are finding themselves with just what Laura said, those kind of that emotional brain takes over, they start to learn skills to be able to kind of regulate. So hopefully that they can get back to a place where learning can occur. And so the nice thing about this is it offers, from a universal perspective for all students, it gives common language in ways that students can relate to, but it can also be adapted to really meet the individual students' needs based on what's regulating for them. So it provides a nice framework to kind of meet the needs of all students, but also those that might need additional support.
Thank you, Jessa. So you'll notice that we've also marked that second step is funded through Title IV grant money. Zones of regulation is funded through our ESSER grant money to make sure that all students have access to this resource. And then we also want to highlight that we have a local health curriculum and a local physical education curriculum that's based on national standards. Our health teachers and physical education teachers work closely together to develop local curriculums to support the health and wellness of our students. So if we scroll down a little bit more, to be able to implement what you saw above, we need to make sure that our teachers have access to high quality professional learning. So we offer Trauma One on an annual cycle. We fund the trainer for that using ESSER money. And we rotate as many staff as we can, so they have strategy to support the students that we see. Restorative Practices is our provider is John Kidda, and he's been offering circling workshops and then working with leadership teams and Jessa to provide professional learning. We offer nonviolent crisis intervention training, which is also grant Title IV funded, that provides de-escalation techniques to all staff. And then again, you're going to see we provide professional learning in zones of regulation. Conscious discipline is what Arlington is using. And then our music teacher said, hey, we know some evidence-based practices around trauma and drumming and music. So again, you can see next to all of those professional learnings how we're using our grant money to fund all these experiences for teachers. So as we, the next thing I want to give you, the final piece to this one first pillar is around staffing patterns. What are the staffing patterns we really need to support the health and wellness? We have health teachers at the MAU level. We have physical education teachers at the Mount Anthony level, but we're going to take some other roles. And these are all the schools in the district that we've highlighted at different board meetings. So we're slowly kind of going through them so you can see it's requiring the support that we're giving to students so that middle of the brain is ready to learn is pretty extensive. And you can see, I touch base, both principals have access to these resources in their building. Clinicians, counselors, the prevention coordinator, Glauca Kuzman at the middle school has been a fantastic resource. It was also grant funded. I should have made a note of that. Some of the new roles you see in there are there's a family engagement specialist in each building. They can go out and work in the home with families. They can build a bridge between the home and the school, and they can work together. We have an art therapist. It's just a different way, another way to reach students. That is a wonderful resource. And then Kate, can you talk a little bit about what a board certified behavior analyst is?
Yes, we have 4 board certified behavioral analysts on staff, and they're the clinical level behavioral analysts. So they can help us with more intensive behavioral challenges that children might be presenting with, to do assessments and develop behavior plans and safety plans with the buildings. And so last year we had one board certified behavior analyst. And this year we have 4 to help us address all the needs of the learners coming back into school. And 2 of those are locally funded, but 2 of those are ESSER funded. So those are supports that we're going to need longer term as we go past our first 2 years of recovery here.
Thank you. And then the last box I'm going to have Renee scroll to, and again, noticing that some of these positions are funded with grant money, is we have SVSU, here we go, additional supports. We have SVSU staff that are available to help in any building. And Jessa falls into that. She's our SVSU behavior and social emotional coach. She is also grant funded. She spoke to you earlier. We have an SVSU health and wellness coach. Her job is to support, one thing we heard clearly from our families, it was overwhelming, and community members was, please increase movement back into the setting, into the school setting. So Jan Wyatt is our SVSU health and wellness coach for staff and students. And these are all new roles, and we're learning as a team to work together. So pillar 1 is all about helping to get that brain ready to learn. And if we slide into pillar 2, pillar 2,
another demo.
were you ready for me, Renee? So pillar 2 is all around engagement and truancy. It's the second pillar of recovery. And so again, the acronyms are very much the same, except for Universal Design for Learning, which I know that Kate will share a little bit more about that, and Collaborative Improvement Plan. So again, some of the resources are the same. Please remember that this pillar is also on our website under the Recovery tab. The transferable skills also applies to this pillar. So the piece of data we're going to show you for this pillar, we're going to stop right here at the attendance. So you get monthly board packets, and in your packet, you have attendance. We can't compare attendance data from year to year right now because our conditions are constantly changing. So last year, students were remote, they were hybrid, they were in person. We had many absenteeism. So we can't compare last year's attendance to this year's attendance. This year's attendance, our policy committee has even made an addendum because we have multiple kids that are quarantining and that are absent due to COVID. So right now you're getting a just snapshot, which again is what it was in one of your board packets to take a peek at. And then the next piece of data that we're going to show you, which was also in your monthly board packets, is our special education population. And we can do a comparison here because these are numbers that are in your board packet and that we also need to submit to the state. So this just gives you a picture. Total for MAU, there's been a little bit of a decline from in our numbers from January 2020 to this past winter, to be noted. So again, we sit down as a team and we look at this information and then we set some goals. And so we're going to slide you in right now to what is our good first instruction for this tier. And both at the middle school and high school, advisory and seminar it's so important that kids have opportunities to connect and have conversations with each other and have an adult that acts in a mentor role. So advisory and seminar reference that piece of time, and they're ever evolving. A lot of that is due to the pandemic. And then we're fostering circling practices. And again, you saw the health curriculum and the Vermont transferable skills. So again, we need to provide professional learning to make sure everyone understands what we're implementing. So through our ESSER grant, we offer circling workshops and restorative practices trainings, and Jessa again is a great resource for that. And then Kate, I'll let you, even in collaboration with Chris and Tim here, just get a little snippet about the Universal Design for Learning piece.
Sure. Universal Design for Learning is a design strategy for designing curriculum and instruction that meets the needs of all learners. So an example of that might be, using a textbook that's digital. So a student that might have a hard time carrying their textbook or remembering their textbook to and from school could just log in at home and read their text, or a student that had maybe some difficulties reading could have the text read to them because it's on a digital format. So it's basically making learning accessible for everyone. And it's a general education initiative. So when 1 in 4 students say, have also have a disability, it just helps those children, everybody access high quality tier 1 instruction. And we have 3 major initiatives that we're working on in the middle and high school, as well as elementaries, related to UDL this year. Dr. Rick Reardon is running our book club, which we have had, this is the 2nd successful year of that. And we've had almost the entire, it feels like a large group of middle school teachers participate both years to help us understand principles and premises of UDL. And then we also have Rick doing a elevating co-teaching work and coaching at the middle school that's really taking on a lot of co-teaching kind of research and looking at how we can implement UDL in different classrooms, as well as a initiative with Katie Novak as well as Leanne Young. So Katie Novak is sponsored by the Vermont Superintendents Association to work with leadership teams across Vermont to bring UDL and inclusion to all of our schools in an effective manner. And then specifically through some of the work we're doing through our collaborative improvement plan here in the SVSU to improve our inclusion rates, we've contracted with Leanne Young, who is an ASCD author, to come in and do some individual work. And she's targeting the leadership team at the high school that Mr. Payne is forming and leading. So that's our UDL work. I'm happy to have Mr. McGuire, Mr. Payne jump into how that looks in their buildings.
When we get to the question part, you guys want to add any details? That sound good? Yes. So we want to thank for our partnership with both our principals in this work because they are active members of the leadership teams for this work. Our final little piece under this pillar of engagement and truancy is linked to responsible and involved citizenship. We want to revisit our personalized learning plan format at the middle school and high school. The middle school and high school have a long running relationship with personalized learning plans, and we are super proud of the teams that are created. And the last piece that, again, recovery is meant to be a multiple year plan. And the last pillar, a last piece of this pillar is we had a huge request from our community to revisit student choice. And so that's something to come. So we've just shared with you pillar 1, health and social emotional health and wellness, and pillar 2, truancy and engagement. And we're going to let you ask us questions, knowing that the third part, academic achievement, will come in a future meeting. So thank you for having us. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much. It's a lot to take in a relatively short period of time, but it sounds as if you are making progress in some areas that really need to be addressed.
We have we have a great team. We have a great team.
Looks like Ed has his
Ed, you
hand
have
up.
a question? Yes.
Sort of. How do you identify students that need help or an intervention of some kind?
So,
Want me to speak to that at all? Laura?
yeah, Chris, go ahead. Chris and Tim.
I was going to suggest that Mr. McGuire is the best person to
Yeah.
answer that question.
Well, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer it, but I'll certainly take a whack at what we do at the, how we do that at the middle school. And I think it's, similar across buildings with Mr. Payne's building as well. But so, since we're looking at the whole child, academic, behavior, social, we have to have data to, support, we can't just kind of make random decisions about, hey, they seem to be struggling today. So we use map data, pretty extensively to look at the academic side of things. We also have some progress monitoring data that we use more on a regular basis, especially when students are getting a targeted intervention. And then when it comes to the behavioral, social, emotional data, we have a couple different ways to do that. And actually we have Jessa Ordway, who just talked to us a little while ago, is helping myself and my behavior team at the school right now. And we have an in-service day coming up in February where we're facilitating some discussions and a protocol to really dive into the SRSS data. Which is, I think Laura referenced it earlier in this discussion, and basically it talks about, behavioral data. Is the student showing, outward behaviors or more keeping those behaviors in, I'm sorry, I'm not using my words right. It's Jessa, help me out here.
Internalizing.
Internalizing and externalizing. Thank you. So
There you go.
like on the spot with all this, right? So we look at that, and then we also have something that the district put together called Swiss data, where it's like a dashboard where everything, it's one-stop shop where like we can access the academic and the social emotional learning data in one space. So basically we review that. And then we have a process at the middle school where teams can flag a student if they're concerned with a document called Student of Concern. And this is something that we've worked on this year to really kind of like tighten up this sequence and this process. So we don't have someone saying like, hey, they're struggling today. Let's do a special education referral. We don't want to jump to that. There's a sequence to follow. So we do the Student of Concern form. That's a team, instructional team calls a counselor, a school counselor to them. They fill that out together. And if there's been, there's a certain number of like classroom interventions that we ask to be tried in the classroom before that's kicked up to like the next level. So the next level would be educational support team. So that's our EST process, educational support team. If the Student of Concern brainstorming doesn't yield results, and then from there, if a student is still struggling, we can discuss, other supports like a 504 or a referral to the EPT, for special education, to look at special education testing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does that mean we don't have detention slips anymore?
We still have, so we do still have referrals, like discipline referrals. And so that is part of the behavioral data that's put into that dashboard. And that's part of the Swiss data that we look at.
Thank you.
But we like to think that those are decreasing though, Ed.
Well, I would hope so over time.
Yeah, over time, I mean, we're in some challenging times now, and that is what we're, students are still, I think it's going to take time for them to acclimate to school again. So, we're constantly really just trying to, help a student, kind of work through it, and we're making progress with a lot of students, but we have the support staff in place, and I think that there's a lot of students that need that extra support right now. And I'm really proud to, when I look at the list of staff that I have, in the middle school to support students, I'm really proud of that. I mean, it's a pretty extensive list, and every one of those people works their tail off all day to support students. So.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I'd like to move on. We'll go, excuse me. Move on to finance. The first item there is the treasurer's report. We need a motion to accept it. Have a second? Dave seconds it. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. We can move on then to approval of the budget. The Finance Committee had a meeting a week or so ago when we went over in some detail the proposed budget. I'm going to ask Renee to go over it again briefly so that we then can make a decision on accepting it or making changes. Renee?
Okay, I'll just pull up. So this is the budget by category. And you can see that comparing this year's budget to last year, truly, it's only a $40,000 increase. And this is, I have this draft posted with tonight's agenda based on some data that I actually just received from the Agency of Education yesterday. So it is considered draft 2. It is a reduction from what the Finance Committee saw as draft 1. So yeah, about a $41,000 increase over the current budget, 0.14%. And again, that shift is really due to the data I received from the agency, which relates to the career technical education. The six semester average, there was a flaw in some of the data that they had originally released, and that has been corrected. So I was able to adjust what our tuition is for Southwest Tech, and that is what the result is in bringing that budget down. So when we look at all inclusive with the Southwest Tech portion, it is at 0.14, but Mount Anthony in and of itself is actually a decrease of $88,000. And just a couple of things to note. There's only a few staffing requests that have been included in this budget. One to add a math position back at the high school to replace one of the two that was reduced in a previous budget year. Reinstating or reinstituting the school to work program, so adding a teacher for that, and then adding a clinician at the high school as well. So we've built the budget with those positions included. We have adjusted salaries based on our collective bargaining agreements that are set. And we've also looked at the budget increases or budget adjustments for any of the benefits associated with our staff. So that's all built in. We reviewed with Tony D'Onofrio some building projects, and those have been factored in. But then you notice on the assessments reductions, and that's mainly attributed to some savings we're seeing with special education and the funding of special education, which is coming through Act 173. There is a shift to a census-based model. So we were provided basically a calculator tool from the agency that we use to apply offsetting revenue to the special education expenses at the SU level. And the result for Mount Anthony, you're seeing is a reduction there. I will share that the legislature is contemplating delaying the implementation of Act 173. And if they do that, we haven't been provided the alternate financial data. So by my calculation, we might end up about $1 million short at the SU level, which will be kind of divided amongst all of the member districts. But I know that Superintendent Culkeen testified before the legislature today asking that the work has already begun for us to work towards Act 173. So we are not supportive of a delay. So that being said, the other reduction that you're seeing there is on the debt service line. So it's that one bond that we knew that was going to be paid off this year. So we have reduced the budget because we won't have that principal payment going forward. So overall, just net to operate Mount Anthony is a reduction of about 0.34%.
Yeah, Renee, just how does that affect the tax rates, just very briefly?
Yep.
With the reduction that we're putting in $2.7 million into reducing the tax burden on the public.
So we have to blend our estimated tax rate calculations with our elementary school districts. So when we take Mount Anthony's budget data and we break out based on equalized pupils, the percentage of students that are at the secondary level and apply the budget by that proportion. And then the same thing happens at the elementary level. That makes up the difference. So we have a 100% of our student population and we blend those rates together. So for Bennington right now with the SVU ESD budget that the board approved, and if Mount Anthony were to approve the budget that you have before you tonight, with the $1 million going into a reserve fund, Bennington would be looking at just under a 2-cent increase. Pownell is basically flat. Shaftesbury about a 3-cent increase. Woodford about an 8-cent decrease. And the North Bennington Graded School District hasn't voted on their budget yet. They're meeting again tomorrow night. But the current draft that we had has North Bennington at about a 7-cent decrease and the Shaftesbury ID District at about 9.5-cent decrease. So that is with the budget that you have before you this evening, again, with that $1 million reduction in the fund balance going into a reserve fund.
Very good. Chad?
Yeah, now that I understand this budget a little bit better, before we vote on this budget, I had my wife write this stuff down so I didn't screw it up. I'd like to make a motion. It's taken me a while to understand this thing. But recently the town voted down the MAU bond vote to refurbish the football field. Most people I spoke with said it was too much money, and many said it was because the proposal included our artificial glass. Whatever the reason, I noticed the MAU did not add any money to the budget to begin to fix the field. So the problems with the field are not going to fix themselves. So I propose that add a line item to the budget this year that would begin the process. I think we should refinish the field in phases, my opinion. This year, I think we should fix the drainage problem. And in the last board meeting, it was stated there was a 3.7 million of unspent money left over from 2022. What that's whatever. Your definition, Jesus, a reserve fund says that the money in that fund can be set aside for future use or for a specific purpose, since we already have 300,000 in a contingency fund. I want to make it clear that any money spent should over the 300,000, it should not be discretionary. The motion I want to make is I move that we take some of the unspent money from the 2022 budget that we now refer as fund balance to reserve $1 million to use to fix a drainage problem on the field this coming year. The other 2,700 should be returned to the taxpayer and further reduce the school tax. In passing, I called Mike Malloy. Actually, I didn't call him. I left a message at the school. He got back to me with an email, said that I asked when's the next time the Spinelli Field Committee is going to meet. He says, well, they're looking at different sources of funding, and we didn't really have that discussion at the last meeting I went to in the library. So it kind of, and at the budget meeting, when Tim said, well, with no restrictions, I said, whoa, wait a minute, that put up a red flag to me. So I want to do stuff for the field. I want to fix these things, yes, but I think we got to look at other ways of doing it. But so I move that we take some of the unspent money from the 2022 budget and take from the fund balance reserve $1 million to fix it, the drainage problem on the field this coming year. The other 2,700 should be returned to the taxpayer.
I second the motion.
Well, wait one sec.
I second the motion.
Very good. Well, I'd like to speak to the motion. That's what is in the budget, basically, is giving $2,700,000 back to offset the expenses that will go to lower the taxes. And what you are proposing, Fran, is really what we're proposing, in the sense that we would move $1 million into a reserve fund to use as we feel is the best, that we can use in a way that we think is the best way to address the problems that the district has.
Okay, is that for Spinelli Field though?
Well, it does not necessarily. I mean,
Because I know we have other problems. in the
we do,
school
but that
every
would be up to the board as to how to spend it. And your motion would certainly be appropriate at the time that the budget passes, that we have $1 million in the reserve fund to use as the board would feel comfortable using. And it certainly could be used for the field. But I think that without a full review of the things that we would want to do, it's inappropriate to set aside that money at this time for that particular purpose. I'm not opposed to it. I think it's a good idea.
I
But
respectfully disagree with that comment, because this is what was asked for. This is what all the coaches wanted. This is what I perceive is the need for the school at this time. So since Fran has made this motion and I have seconded that motion, I'd like to call for the question.
Is there an option for debate? I mean, we haven't had an opportunity. I appreciate that, but can we ask some questions with respect to that before?
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate the sentiment. The coaches are asking for that, but we definitely need to talk about how that $1 million would be used, because if we had if I remember correctly, $3.6 million proposal to do everything that we wanted to do. Renee, sorry, that when you showed how much the taxes were increasing or decreasing, what was the time period on that?
That is just going to be for next fiscal year.
But I'm sorry, so was it was it 2 cents per year, the change for the
So,
taxpayer?
yeah, no, just, so for Bennington resident, that would just be next year's tax bill. And then once we look to budget FY '24, so next year at this time, we'll have different sets of numbers. And we'll be projecting or forecasting what the anticipated rate would be for '24.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Renee, do you know what that what $1 million, like, I'm not proposing this, I'm just asking the question, like, if we moved 2 million into the reserve for argument, like what is the $1 million, what's the impact of $1 million on the tax rate? Do you know I know it's complicated, but are we talking hundreds, thousands? If it's too complicated of a question, I guess I was trying to put it in perspective.
That was kind of what I was asking too, Stephanie, is I was asking what impacted adding that or if we were to, sorry, the $2.7 million, how much of an impact did that have? What was it originally and how much did it bring the tax rate down for individual towns?
So to Stephanie's question, if we looked at it another way, so if we put another $1 million into potentially the reserve fund, then Bennington would be looking at potentially a 5 cent increase, 2.5 cents or 2 1/3 cent for Pownell, 5 cents for Shaftesbury, and reduction still for Woodford, North Bennington, and Shaftesbury. But again, I have to stress that these are just estimates at this point. And then conversely, if we didn't put any money into the reserve, it's a 1 cent decrease for Bennington, 2 cents for Pownell. Shaftesbury still sees a small increase because of the drop in the CLA, and then again, decreases across the board.
So one more time, sorry, Renee, I know you answered this. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. But you're saying for instance, for Bennington, what you're showing right now is a 1 cent increase per citizen, per taxpayer?
No, it's a
Over a
decrease.
year?
That would be a decrease if we did not put any money into the reserve fund, but use the full $3.7 million to offset the tax burden.
Right, I'm sorry, a decrease, red, I got it. But what I'm saying is, like, I'm not misunderstanding units or time frame. It's a 1 cent decrease over a year for a taxpayer?
Per
1 cent for next year's tax bill.
per
Just next year's tax
thousand,
bill.
correct? I mean, it's per
$100 of assessed
$100.
value.
Okay.
For $100, okay,
Okay.
that's what I'm trying to, okay, thank you.
Ed has his hand up.
But what we have in the budget at the present time is a $2.7 million amount of money to offset the amount of taxes that have to be raised. And that would result in Bennington, I want to be sure I get this number right, at a 2 cent increase, Renee, at a 2 cent increase. That would allow us to have $1 million in a reserve fund that the board would be responsible for if they choose to spend as they see fit. It could very well be what Fran has suggested, but exactly how that money would be used for the coaches in the fields and for the bathroom facilities and all that, I think really should be decided by the board at a lengthy meeting when we have all the facts before us.
Ed has his hand up.
Stephanie was ahead of me, but I do have a couple of thoughts.
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay, I'll go.
Go ahead.
When we put this issue on before the voters to take a reserve, to put money into a reserve when it was unspent, we had no idea that we would ever be in a situation where there was going to be $1 million left over. So I think we have a responsibility, the taxpayers, to not abuse the right that they've given us. Secondly, since the legislature is thinking about delaying Act 173, and we were just told that that could increase our cost by $1 million, we need to know how to plan for that. And I'm not sure where that fits into this discussion, but that is a disturbing number to me. And thirdly, what's going to happen in a year or 2 years from now when we don't have all this money? How high is the budget going to go up?
Well, that's the nice thing about the reserve, is that the reserve fund would not be affected because we're not using the reserve fund to offset the amount of taxes that we have to have. But on the other side of the coin is if we had an unexpected decrease in the amount of money that the state would apply to our budget, then we have that reserve fund to be able to meet that expense. And this is something that the board would have to decide. In other words, if we have a reserve fund, we have that fund that we could use for a variety of reasons, for a variety of occasions, that the board would then allocate that money as it sees fit. It could be, if the worst happens and the state comes down and says we need another $1 million, we could use it for that. If it stays where it is now, we could use that reserve fund to discuss how we could use that to improve the fields, if that's what the board wants, or we could use it for whatever. But it would be a discussion, and I think that it's important that the board spend some time to discuss this and make the decision how to use that money as best we can.
I can support putting $300,000 into the reserve fund, but not $1 million.
Well, I was just gonna say, between Tim and Ed both, and I think both of the things that I was gonna say is that one, we don't want to abuse the fact that the voters voted down the field. And then we're coming back and we're saying we're gonna take the money all at one time, one big lump, and name it for the fields against their will of the voters like that. It makes sense to take and put money in a reserve fund like you're talking about, meet the finance committee and so forth, and discover the priorities of what needs to happen to the schools and things, and make them and follow that particular protocol. I saw the schedule that was already out there, like the weight room is already out for bid and a whole bunch of other things. So we need to do that stuff that way, as opposed to pissing the voters off, and this budget won't be passed if we do something out there that way. So let's be smart.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say,
Stephanie's been
That's fine, go
waiting.
ahead. Okay, I'll go after her.
Fran, I appreciate I agree that the field probably needs some repair while the voters decide what to do with it for safety purposes.
Mhm.
And I hear what you're saying, Leon, with respect to like the voters voting down the project, but so I probably am not going to be that popular, but what I'm hearing is that like what we have proposed now with $1 million in reserve for a $100,000 house, it's a $30. We're in pretend like right now, as it stands, we're looking at like a $30 increase on a $100,000 house. If I think what I'm struggling with is that I find frequently that people have a really hard time in fluctuating bills, and that if we put this money in the reserve and then need it both for operation, like things that come up in the maintenance repairs, and something comes down the pike that we don't get the $1 million from the state, like we could actually be looking at a starting off the next fiscal year in like behind, and already with a tax increase without increase in salaries, but benefits and or other improvements. So I would almost feel more comfortable, and I don't mean to use this in a frivolous way. That's not what I'm proposing, but I mean, I would almost feel more comfortable with increasing the reserve number to be able to provide that consistency for the taxpayers and the risk, and manage the risk. Like, look at it this way. Like if all the worst case scenario happens, we've minimized the future impact of that hit on the taxpayers in the next year. And so I guess that I'm for at least putting the $1 million in, and I think we can decide what to do with it as more information comes. But that would be my 2 cents.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on this, Fran?
Just so I'm perfectly clear, what my concern was is that when I talked to a couple of people, I emailed with Mike Malloy, when he said that they're going to look at different funding thing, and I'm saying, oh boy, here we go. My real concern is going back to start this field stuff, and then they turn around and let's say, for the sake of argument, the board agrees, well, we're going to spend $354,000 for a damn storage shed. I'm going to go through the roof on that, and I think that it's totally wrong to do that. Now, I did go to that meeting at the library, and Peter Janellis was there, and Jason Morrissey was there. In fact, Peter Janellis said, I think we might be able to get this stuff done for half the money. Well, that was, good. I was optimistic then. But if we turn around, like I said, the taxpayers have voted this down in a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, and they see that damn building at $354,000, and by then it'll be probably $450,000. I think there's going to be hell to pay for it. I don't want to do that to the taxpayer. I really don't. I want to fix the field. I say we put in another storage building. To hell with heating it. We don't need another thing that we got to maintain for years to come. That's, it's going to escalate out of control. And as far as we need to do the bathrooms out there, I get that, but we don't have to heat it. We can do the same thing as we do to the concession stand. They got bathrooms there. They winterize that. You can do the same damn thing to those over there. And as far as they want a parking lot over by the concession stand. We don't need that nonsense. I mean, come on. I get it, but for board members in the buses, well, I gotta tell you, when these other teams come here, they get off the bus, they go in the locker rooms, right? And when the game is done, they're going to get back on those buses. A statement was made, well, there's been some accidents over there. Well, maybe they ought to learn to drive or park the damn thing somewhere else. I don't know. But that is my real concern. I do want to do stuff. I'm not trying to say, well, the hell with the kids and the hell with this. No, that's not my point. If we do something like that in the next year, 2 or 3, you'll never pass a damn budget if you do stuff like that. That's all I'm saying. And if we do this the right way, and listen, there's people that will volunteer. I'll volunteer my damn time. It doesn't matter to do things, but the storage building is real. I don't let down to me that's going to cost that kind of money. But anyway, I've said enough. I've said my concerns, and I hope the hell we don't go that route.
Well, that would simply be up to the board, and
I
you're a
get
member
it.
of the board, and you could turn it down.
Trust me, I will.
I know you will.
Susan.
Yeah, excuse me.
Susan has her
Oh,
hand up.
Susan, sorry.
I don't mean to continue the Spinelli Field discussion, but I have to ask, knowing that the voters voted it down, and knowing that there's an imminent danger to our athletes, and especially the track, I'm bringing up the track right now. Why wasn't that built into the budget when the weight room was built into the budget? I mean, there were other key factors that were built into the budget. Why wasn't something like the track built into the budget in the first place?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's what Fran's asking, that it be put into the budget.
It's not. Anyway,
Wait, it is? Because I just misunderstood Fran then.
Yes, he asked that it be, that the $1 million be put into the budget as a line item to fix the drainage problem and essentially whatever else is contingent, but you could spend $1 million on. So he suggests.
That was from the contingency fund. The weight room isn't from the contingency fund. That was built into the budget, correct? Am I wrong?
And Fran saying you're saying you don't want things like the track or the storage shed or things like that. You don't want that built into the budget, correct?
Well,
That's not what he said. He said he wants it in.
No, I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, he said he wants it in phases. So in other words,
Right.
he doesn't want to spend 3.7 million on it. he wants it, this year you spend this much, this year you could spend this much, et cetera.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
we've got that.
What, my question is, what were you saying you don't want Malloy and
ask-
everyone else to?
Ask him to read his motion again.
All right, now, what I can say, yes, we should do everything, other than the parking lot and a $354,000 building, storage building, that's ridiculous. But we do it over years. Maybe this year we do the drainage. Maybe next year we do the storage building. Maybe the year after that we do the track. I don't know. Maybe we do the track before we do the storage building. It's whatever.
Right,
But-
it's whatever the board
Right.
feels that is right.
Right.
And I think that it is, anyway, we've talked about this. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up?
There are no other hands.
Excuse me?
There aren't any other hands.
No other hands. We have a motion. We had a second to the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
I'm sorry, one more time. What is the motion we're talking about,
The
Fran's
motion
motion?
would be to take $1 million and put it into the budget and have it used for drainage of the field. Is that right, Fran?
Yes.
Okay.
Have it used for drainage of the
Is this-
field.
And then are we keeping the reserve as listed
We would
by?
have no reserve. We would have no reserve now.
So I can appreciate the spirit of compromise, and I do appreciate some of the things you're saying, Fran. There might be some extraneous things on there,
Yeah.
but with due respect to what Jackie said, it isn't what we asked for, and I understand there's got to be some level of compromise. I've got it, but if we put the $1 million towards the football field, my concern is, or towards the whole project, not just the football field, the athletic field. But what my concern is, if we say, okay, we put this $1 million towards it, is that down the road, then everyone's going to say, all right, well, we gave you that $1 million towards it. And again, turf is a better investment long-term, and fixing a drainage problem, I'm not, completely knowledgeable about it. What I know is that we've taken measures before to fix the field, and they pop back up again more quickly than turf would. So that's my concern with it. That's again, I appreciate the spirit of compromise, and I do appreciate what you're saying, Fran, about some things might not have been completely necessary, but if we do the $1 million and then everyone says, okay, that's it, that's what I'm worried about.
So we have a motion on the floor, and it is to use rather than put the $1 million into reserve fund, is to just put it into the budget as a line item to work on the drainage problem on the field. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
How many is that?
Two.
Two. All opposed?
Dave.
Okay,
Nay.
the motion is defeated. And that doesn't mean that Fran doesn't have good ideas, and I'm sure he'll be fighting for them. So
Not at all. And down the road, that we can revisit that $1 million could be allocated, right? We can do it down the road, but we got to talk about it, right?
It very well could be, and as Leon and others have pointed out, we have to have a full discussion. The board has to have a full discussion on the best, if we feel that $1 million should be used for the field or for the athletic facility, then we ought to have a full discussion on how we are going to use that money.
And
Agreed.
I'm fine with using like $1 million of funds, but we don't even know what, do we know what improvement, we don't know, the million is an arbitrary number at this point, right? I mean, so I'm not really, I think adding to the reserve and then having a comprehensive conversation from, in a public comprehensive conversation for the board to make a decision about the reserve funds when we have more adequate information seems more reasonable to me.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on the budget as proposed? Would then accept a motion to approve the budget as proposed.
So move.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Stephanie?
Aye.
Opposed? Two opposed, three opposed, I'm sorry. The motion passes. Very good. We can go on then. Oh, let's see, we have the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Second it.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? One of the things on the consent agenda, as Sean Marie rightly pointed out, is we have a number of retirements. It has been the board's policy to recognize those people that are retiring at the end of the school year with a presentation. We weren't able to do that last year, but I certainly hope we'll be able to do that this year. And we certainly appreciate the service that those people that are retiring have given the school over the years. We have a motion on the floor for the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Very good. We can go down to policies. Leon, do you want to lead us through that?
Those are pretty much self-explanatory. Go ahead. You can-
Okay, we have two policies. The first one is 5145, which is a condom availability. Are there any questions on it? Oh, we have a motion then?
So moved.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? We can go on then with the next one has to do with what, Leon? Do you know what that? I'm not really sure. Alexia?
Anaphylaxis.
Analysis.
I'm not
That's
sure.
a nurse reviewed all the particular things that needed to be updated in terms of the kids of the high school. So everybody had a copy, I mean, for all the kids along that line. So we had some updates and some straightened out things in there for those. And so
So this is a matter of
health items.
health items.
Health items.
Excuse me?
Health items.
Health items.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions on that? I'm sorry, I should have done a little more homework on it. Do we have a motion?
A little bit.
Okay, we have a second?
Second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Very good. The chair's report, I do not have a report. I'd just like to thank those people that put in hours of work on the budget, and particularly Renee and her team that put it together, as well as the other administrators. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And I think it was an exceptionally well-done budget this year, where the questions were easily answered, and hopefully it'll all work out well. Then we have some other for your information.
We missed
The
the
administrator's
administrators.
report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I knew I was missing something. I'm sorry.
I second that.
Tim, I'm sorry.
That's right. I do have a student representative through the Zoom. Georgie, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Okay, so go ahead and would you do me a favor and just reintroduce yourself to the board members, please? And you're going to be first up for the high school as far as anything you would like to present.
Okay. I'm Gabriella Georgie. I'm a junior at the high school, and I'm here with Student Senate, but I'm also in a number of clubs at the high school besides that. The Student Senate wanted to give you an update about the initiatives that we're doing right now. One of our hopes is to have another dance this year. We originally were hoping for something in the winter, but with COVID, we are trying to push for something in the spring instead so that we could do something outside that's COVID safe, similar to homecoming. Another thing that we're working on is a dodgeball tournament, kind of like the volleyball tournament that we held in the fall, to raise money for our club, as well as just set up a nice event for students and staff to participate in. We had like 14 teams for the volleyball tournament. It was a really good turnout and a fun event. So that was well. We're working on a report as well with Mr. Payne to shift senior parking because of some problems with like entrances that seniors have been having, since teachers have keys to all the doors while students only have access to the main entrance in the morning. And our last two initiatives are organizing a club fair for the spring to boost club membership, as well as updating a student feedback form that we started my freshman year before COVID. So we're going to revisit that and send it to the students to get more feedback. That's what's going on with Senate. With some of my other clubs, we've been working on community service. I'm in Interact, so we've been doing a lot of stuff through the museum or the Park McCullough House. And we're also doing community service with National Honor Society. A project that we're trying to initiate right now is the bathrooms at MAU. We're going to try to repaint some of the doors with some positive like themes or messages on them. And I think the last club that I should speak about is the Ignite Club that I'm in, which is basically a mentor club that pairs upperclassmen with freshmen who are struggling to adapt to the high school setting. And it just kind of helps them to find a buddy that they can like turn to that isn't a teacher per se.
Thank you. I didn't quite understand a bit about the senior parking. Is there a problem with that?
So due to like the entrance, like the only accessible entrance for students right now is either the cafeteria or the main entrance for people who have like clubs or need to see teachers in the morning. And with where the senior parking is right now, students have to walk like around like the entire school because they aren't let in through the back doors. And in like the winter months, it gets like very slippery there to like walk around the whole way. And it's kind of like inconvenient for a lot of students. So we were proposing to some of the teachers to like switch where the teacher parking is right now with where the senior parking is, so that seniors could have easier access to the school since the teachers could go in at any door.
Could only seniors, I mean, if that were approved, are you proposing that only seniors could use that door, or could sophomores or juniors use it too?
Well, how we have it set up right now is it's senior parking, and then for like sophomores and juniors, you just park on the street, like wherever you can. So it would really only change the seniors parking. So it would just change their access to the main entrance.
I didn't understand it. Thank you. Leon pointed it out. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so you're all square.
Yeah.
So,
Tim, take care of that.
and Student Senate Gabrielle has also pointed out a safety concern because for athletic teams returning late, there are athletes who are parking closest to the flood wall, and only seniors can park on campus, whereas it may be an increase in safety to have students park closer to the baseball field, softball field in the evening returning from games. Because there's teams already who do kind of buddy patrols to get kids to cars safely. So that was an issue that I was concerned of, and I thought it was a good point made by the Senate.
Yeah, that was also a concern. I think what we were also going to try to do like kind of about that is, since a lot of senior passes like aren't all taken, there is like an excess of spaces. So we were going to try to like open passes up to like juniors and sophomores after seniors claim them.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, when the Senate comes up with a recommendation, do you then meet with the principal or his assistant or somebody? But how is the information transferred from the Senate to the administration where decisions would be made?
Mr. Payne sits in on a lot of our meetings and gives us like feedback about if ideas would be able to work or like how we should fix them. And then once a month, two of the officers, so I'm one of the presidents of the club, and then we have another president and a secretary and a treasurer. So two of us meet with Mr. Payne monthly to update.
Thank you. Sounds good. Are there any questions of her?
Gabriella sounds like a very busy girl.
Yes, Gabriella, thank you. Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Of course, thank you.
So for me, all right. I just wanted to let folks know that this week is final exam week at the high school. It has a little bit of a different feel to it, as we actually have students in the building who've never taken a final exam because of COVID. So a lot of discussions at the teacher level. I'm hoping that teachers are able to balance that need for collecting evidence, but also a little compassion as students are kind of figuring this out. We have an in-service day this Friday for teachers and staff, which means students are not coming to school. So if your student tells you that they don't have to go to school on Friday, they're telling you the truth. Second semester, spring semester, starts Monday, January 24th. It's the next Monday. And I know a lot of students and staff are looking forward to it. It's kind of a nice change of pace, a different set of classes. So hopefully we'll go through that process pretty quickly. Speaking of process, something I should have asked Mr. Colkeen before I signed my contract. Where are we in the NEASC accreditation process? We are in a visit year. So the team will be coming to visit us in April of this year. I have talked to Mr. Colkeen. He's aware of that. The board has an opportunity to meet with the team. Mr. Colkeen will be facilitating that as soon as I get him, which day the team would like to meet with him and members of the board. But I think some of you have gone through that process before. The high school goes through this. There have been some changes since the last time I did this, but similar in that there are standards that they'll give you feedback on and things that the high school can work on as they go through this 10-year cycle for accreditation. It's already been mentioned, but this current school year, I'm already aware of a number of staff who have decided to retire. Diane Moore and Jim Cross, both of the science department. I think Jim has stepped away at this time for to take care of his health, and we wish him a speedy recovery. That will create a need as we start February, looking to fill positions. We could have as many as 3 to 4 vacancies in the science department due to retirements and movement. So that's a challenge that we're going to have to take on. Chung Suk Lad, long-serving member of the math department. It was my pleasure to be her principal at the middle school. She's an outstanding advocate for her students. She moved to the high school where I'm sure that the high school benefited from her relentless pursuit to get the most out of her students. She too has decided to step away from teaching at mid-year. And so we've been fortunate enough in that department to fill that position with a teacher for the second semester, and we're excited about that. And we'll talk about JT in the future as far as introductions. But he will start with, the new teacher will start with this on Monday. Chung Suk will serve her last day on Friday with her department meeting. So she's a very private individual. There will be no fanfare, there will be no parade, or she will come and find me. But I hope to, as we go through the spring, to recognize all these individuals for their long service to the school. As I said, the hiring process, there are a number of positions that are already known to us to be vacant. There are a number of positions, as Renee went through the budget, that we're hoping to add if the voters and the board support the budget proposal. But we should have a busy season attempting to fill these positions. Chris is probably going to talk about this a little bit. In the age of COVID, filling positions is even more challenging, and in areas such as science and math, it's going to be tough. We're getting a handful of candidates for any kind of postings that we put up there. So we have our work cut out for us.
Tim, in terms of the math, do we have somebody that teaches advanced calculus, or where are we with that program?
Well, our new hire does. So my wife was walking the dog at the new park up in Willow Park. I got an urgent phone call that says you need to be at Willow Park immediately. And she introduced me to a new graduate from MCLA's teacher preparation program. He's a graduate of RPI, currently doing his student teaching at Mount Greylock. I know the head teacher there. He spoke raving. He's currently teaching AP Calculus for Mount Greylock, so he is fully qualified to teach that level of mathematics once he gets to us.
Great, good.
And I owe my wife dinner for that scoop, so.
Yeah, we'll pay for it. As long as that's very exciting. Chris?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Spring semester, when you say it like that, it sounds kind of like, it's uplifting for everyone here. I appreciate it. I wish I had, something like that to say, spring something. So I continue to work on staff wellness as one of my major goals this year as principal. And so I have a small committee that I put together that we meet weekly for an hour to talk about different activities and events to support staff. And my philosophy is that the district, the schools, we are all committed to the social emotional learning and serving the whole child. And I think if the staff aren't in a good place and are not well, then they're not going to be in a level-headed place with an ability to support the whole child. So I'm really trying to focus in on supporting staff for that reason. I've recently, just last week, had the district wellness coach, a newly hired district wellness coach, Jan Wyatt, join me for that committee meeting. She's all really jazzed up and really excited, lots of ideas about she's already put into place a lot of ideas of different activities in the district level. She's really trying to, and I agree, we agree on this, a philosophy. She's really trying to get to know middle school staff, get to know staff of the different buildings. And our thinking is that the participation in those different activities offered through this district will increase a lot once she has connections with the staff in the building. So we're trying to plan for the February in-service day. We're planning an hour staff wellness like activity thing so she can really get to know the middle school staff. And I'm hoping that that will help with more involvement with her other her other plans. Another piece of that staff wellness that I think is extremely important that I've been working on is the implementation of classroom circles, also known as restorative circles. The idea, and we're contracted with John Kidda, who again, for a reference in the recovery money, I've had John Kidda last week as well join my student support team meeting. I've committed to doing the classroom circles or restorative circles at every faculty meeting. I didn't quite hit the mark in December, but we did a circle in November. We did one in January after the break, and I'm going to try to commit to that every month. The purpose of that is to support and build connections and community with staff. There's a bigger picture goal of starting to model and provide professional learning on that practice, so that can be replicated in the classroom. And teachers can do that work with students. But again, I think there's a lot of professional learning and support that needs to be offered to the staff so they can feel comfortable to have those conversations and to run those circles in the classroom. So that's a major thing that we're working on at the middle school right now. When we talk about the social emotional learning, we do have a second step, which is our social emotional learning curriculum. I've been kind of reviewing the usage reports for that recently. Which just came out to me, and really trying to take a look and dive into like what lessons we've taught kids and what the data is showing us about what behaviors are coming to fruition in classrooms. And and trying to determine, is it a tier 1 issue? Like, have we not done that lesson that supports bullying and harassment, for example? And if so, we need to focus on doing that. And if not, then what are the students that are still struggling after they've received that first instruction? So we can start pulling out some targeted tier 2 intervention groups for whatever behaviors they're struggling with. So that is an ongoing project at the middle school. I've been working with my PBIS committee, positive behavior intervention support. And we do different challenge months. So we have like kind of a school-wide goal. And then students, try to reach a mark of like earning a certain number of moolahs, and there's some sort of reward or something attached. I think I mentioned to the board, and I think I got some like, what is he talking about? Rightfully so. But I have working with the group on a challenge day around masking. And we're connecting it to a school-wide activity where I've agreed with several students in conversations and with the faculty to get a haircut based on the result of it. And the haircut will be in the form of a mullet. So I really got to time this out right, because I really don't want to come to a board meeting in a couple months and be like, hey guys, principal report. But if I do, just my disclaimer, like, why. We're having a lot of fun with it, and that's part of it. And we're just trying to create some fun and some excitement in the building. And it's kind of a light thing for a very important cause about making sure that we're wearing masks. We've even toyed with little, little phrases like mask up for mullets and stuff like that. So we're having fun with that. And I'd love to invite, board members to, I'm thinking about doing some sort of like live streams, because I can't have all the kids pile into the CAF, in these times to watch, but some sort of like live stream for them of like me getting the haircut. So I'll be sure to extend an invitation if when that happens. My other goal with the district right now is scheduling, is relooking the master schedule. And I formed a scheduling committee. We've had a couple meetings. My associate principal, Mrs. Austin, has reached out to NELMS, which is an acronym for the New England League of Middle Schools. And she's connected to with a scheduling expert. And we have him, we're hiring him to come for a 1-day visit, which is actually going to be the first week of February. And he's going to be meeting with representatives from my scheduling team to kind of help us get to our end goal. I've given some parameters around the scheduling for the committee, and our next meeting is tomorrow, actually, and members from the committee are tasked with coming back and kind of, based on our conversations and the parameters I've given, penciling in some like ideas for what the schedule might look like, length of blocks, number of blocks, A-day, B-day rotation, all that stuff. I'm really encouraging staff in conversations with Laura and Jim, I'm really encouraging staff to not limit themselves and really think creatively and outside the box when it comes to this schedule. I think it's time that we, students are different, than they were before. I think they have different needs. And I think that we can be creative and do something better than like kind of just the same old thing, tweaking a block here and there. So I'm excited to give an update soon on that. I'm also working with others in the building, a small group in the building around our transition timeline. Just all the transition meetings with elementary schools, with high schools. We live in the middle. Mr. Payne has taught me that we live in the middle and we kind of, balance both sides of that. So nice to have Mrs. Green back in the building, coming back from a leave, and she's absolutely like a real great resource to help me with that. So we've been talking a lot this week. And then the last thing I'll say, just a little hiring update. We have checked some boxes and filled some positions. I'm excited to say that. I think last time I was here giving a report, we had hired a Spanish teacher, but they hadn't started yet. Or foreign language teacher, I should say. She has started. She's doing an excellent job. She's got a great transition to the school. I'm actually a former employee of the middle school, and it's just really nice to have her back. We have a health teacher now working and in the building and in the classroom, so that is really great. I think last time I gave the report, I think that we had the same thing hired. We were waiting for like kind of the paperwork and stuff to go through. We just recently hired, and with Laura's help, a Title I interventionist. So it's a reading interventionist funded through title money. And they're starting, I think it's next week, if my calculations are correct. And we do have one of the 2 6th grade math openings that I had, we have filled, and that person is settling in and started. And all the new hires have been great. I'm feeling lucky to have found them because, well, as Mr. Payne alluded to, it's been a challenge. And when you said 4 or 5 in the pile, I'd like to see your pile because I'm not seeing that many always. I do have 1 6th grade math opening still. I have it covered currently. I think I've reported this before with a 6th grade math interventionist at the building. Obviously, the need to cover the classroom right now, but I'm committed to continuing to look for a candidate and getting that person back into the role of interventionist. We have professional learning days coming up, Friday, excuse me, and then in February, but I'll stop right there.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Just one important one. Are the kids on track to meet their goal for you to get the mullet, Chris?
So it's a good question. So only time will tell, because this is the challenge that we're putting together for February and March. So we may start it a little early, like this month. So because I got to grow this out, man. Look at it. I got a little ways to go. So they tell me like March, I'll probably be good. So we figured it's a really big issue in the building around the mass. Just most kids do a great job, but you always have those similar to all those those constant reminders, and it's such an important thing. So we figured usually we do the month challenges, but we figured giving a little bit more time to this. And plus, I wanted them to earn it a little bit if I'm actually going to cut a mullet. I mean, they got to work to that a little bit.
Absolutely.
So I go ahead.
Well, I just wanted my answers for both, and at this day and time, in terms of the climate and the environment, in terms of education, and COVID being involved here, and the disconcerting efforts, the down of the parent and the kids being out of school and the teachers are concerned and so forth along that line. I just want us to do everything we possibly can to be able to start to bring back the enthusiasm that we can get from parents that feel that their kids are really getting to know more than what they had when we had them. They were out of school so more and so much that they saying, okay, they're not, kids are not learning. I'm saying we need to, it's a perception. Okay, it is a perception out here that's going around, and I'm saying, how can we change the perception? Because I know everybody is working, we've heard of all the things you're trying to do and so forth, but still we got to do this, the perception with the teachers, with the parents and the students. And I'm saying, we're here to try to help make sure that we turn things around. Bennington can just be enlightened with some of those real types of things that you're talking about doing for the students. Do something that'll be helpful to the parent to address their concern. We're trying to address all the teachers' concerns and so forth. So let's do everything we could to improve the climate.
I have a question for Tim. I'm sorry, I forgot to, our last meeting, you talked about revisiting the schedule
Yeah.
too, particularly in terms of the long block of things. Is that still on the drawing board?
So that committee completed its work at the start of December. And the recommendation was a first step, which would be to focus on the 9th grade year, a transition from the middle school where a student at Chris's building will do 7 classes a day. And we have 4. The committee's recommendation was that for 9th graders in the 4 core subjects, that those classes be 45 minutes, but they be year long.
Good.
So that you would take a math and English, social studies, and a science class year long. It would still allow you the opportunity to take Southwest Tech classes, their interest blocks for 9th graders, and you could take a long block elective like an art or a music or a gym class. So that is what we are scheduling for next year. That will also help us too, though, for kids who are in grades 9 through 12 who need help with reading, with math, writing, because those classes should be geared to a 45-minute window and not an 85-minute window. So that should give us some flexibility to do that throughout the day. So that is our first step.
And you can do that through the scheduling program, I can't remember, School Street or whatever it is called. You can
Through
do that.
Infinite, yes.
Yeah, you can do that, have two different schedules running at the same school at the same time.
What I would tell folks is still consider it the current schedule as far as when the bell rings, but you would take any of those 85-minute blocks and you just cut them in half. And so, a 9th grader might take an English and a social studies class. It'll be fine, but it'll be a year long and it'll be a shorter block of time.
Okay, I'm all for it. I think it makes a lot of sense. Are there any other issues that should be brought before this board?
I just have, we're gonna have to have a special meeting to approve the warning
Okay,
and notice, so I just want to kind of put that on your radar. I think I received the drafts back from Dina today, so
Okay.
I can, based on the numbers, I can put that together. And then we'll just have to find a time when it will work for everybody to meet to approve it. And I just asked Dina if the boards can sign electronically, and she said yes.
great, very
So,
good. So this will be within the next week or so?
yes,
Certainly
yes, we
before
have
next-
to have everything
We
done
have
by
to have
next
it by the
Friday.
29th or something, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other issues that should be brought before this board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Have a second? All in favor? Thank you very
Aye.
much.